anymore, but yeah, okay.
I was hoping to say something briefly before the recording started, but I guess I'm.
Who are we looking at? Right?
So welcome. I'm so glad you could make it. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time that you're gonna give to be a facilitator as well. So thank you. This project was designed by John and Savvy to build relationships with the as for youth and seniors, to have those conversations about elder abuse, social isolation, and what's the third one? Oh my goodness.
Ageism.
Ageism. Oh my goodness. Monday. But yeah, so each session will be it'll be like each topic will be each different session, so it'll be 3 different sessions. And yeah, John, do you have anything to add about the project? I feel like everybody here knows everything about it, so I don't.
I do know all about the project. It was originally Sabby's idea. This is her pet idea about getting young people and old people to discuss where their relationships are, because the information didn't seem to be flowing back and forth. And so for my part, I see these groups somehow meeting on a reasonably regular basis. Maybe looks like three sessions are being suggested. I'd say that's about right. It doesn't have to be a big group. It has to be a group that's willing to share. And I think part of my job will be to be with these people. And my personal preference is for older people, but I can deal with teenagers too, because I have grandchildren. And I think that if we can get these kids to come forward with their own view of how things are in a very frank way, it will give us a state of the union kind of, where are we at right now? What do you think the problems are? And then we can maybe get to the point, which is, what do we want to do about it now? I mean, if I had my way, I would try and get together ultimately in the form of looks like a podcast here, but I would love to be able to produce a television, couple of spots on TV, and I've had some experience with that, not a lot, but to have these kids feel like they're being part of it, and so are the older people too. I know I've already tested the reaction with these old guys who are about my age, which is 75, and they're very articulate, these guys, and very anxious to help, and they can't wait. I've got them so gunned up to fight social isolation in my own little bailiwick here, but I would like to be able to create maybe, I don't want it to go into these separate camps too much. I want there should be a few face-offs in this hockey game, so that the kids and the adults will talk to each other freely about what their thoughts are.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Who keeps interrupting me? Nobody's going to talk. Hello?
Yeah,
You're good to go. It's when a new person enters the room, it warns them that they're being recorded.
Oh, well, that's
So a robot is interrupting you.
Well, we can work with that. And if these things require interaction between the individuals, aged and not aged, then I'm more than happy to attend a meeting where you can see the real people, get a feeling for what's going on, and effectively do I would call a program where these discussions take place and these conclusions are wrapped up. That's the way I would look at it, but not everybody's going to have my free time. So, but I have no qualms now that I'm finished all my holiday taking. I'm well rested for the piece, and I'm prepared to get going right now. Okay? Is that what you're
Okay,
looking for?
yeah. Yeah, so the podcast portion that what I was going to talk about here, or that I was going to get Savvy to talk about more, which because she is the expert in this. But for my understanding now, the program is being recorded, and then they're going to take that information to be put into a podcast.
That
and
could
it sounds-
work. But you got to get everybody on the playing field first,
Right.
and then we can produce a podcast to go with that. So I think
So-
any podcasts don't cost very much. You guys at NROC already have a good cameraman and a production facility for these things. So it wouldn't, that should be more of the end product, I think.
Yeah.
But I would like to meet with the kids and the old people. That's me again. And just keep them on an even keel, because there's some people, especially older people, having a chance to talk will seize it immediately. And so, but at least they're interested in the subject matter and how it affects them. They've already been talking about that, and I will warm them up so that they know what they're to contribute. I have access to women as well. I don't know about you, Trudy, but I have a good friend of Sarah Bercier at the Council on Aging, who has agreed to provide some people, and I think they've already advertised for it. And Stephanie Codieu is there, and she'd be very helpful too. So you'll have people to talk to on the old side. I don't know too many youngsters, at least not too many who want to talk to me. So I'm not like, this is where we have to move forward fairly directly, because the longer we talk about it, the less gets done. So we should schedule stuff in a very short order and get them introduced to the project. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, so the podcast portion is just going to be taken from whatever we record, and the content will be used from that. Okay. So the use of Zoom technology, I have my colleague Ella here who will be moderating the Zooms.
Okay, good.
So she will be the one in charge of running the Zooms, muting people. She's also here today. Moderating the Zoom.
Well, I have met Ella before, I'm pretty sure, because I saw her picture pop in. And so she knows what I look like on TV, and I know what she looks like. So I think we could probably get along together, but I'm not going to interfere with the process. You guys know what you're doing. And the more you do, the less I have to. So that's perfect.
Yeah, so we have Ella going to be moderating the Zoom, so it won't be up to the facilitators to be having to worry about that. It's a lot harder to have to manage people and the Zoom at the same time. We have somebody who is proficient in Zoom, at least, with us for the sessions.
Is Ella prepared to meet with me personally at your office just to have like a half-hour pep talk with me and point us in the right direction? the reason I say that is Sabby has got a full-time job. And I don't want the agenda controlled by her work schedule because I can do anything she can do. So
Okay,
we are a team because we wrote the book together, but we're not a team for any other reason. And so we could do this, I think. Either one of us could.
okay, well, that's also very good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's keep a checklist of stuff I can do, and we'll make it easier for you right at the beginning. So we have a mechanical move forward schedule. How's that?
Right.
You'll be sorry you asked me.
Okay, so do we
Alright.
have any other questions before we move into the content? I'm sorry,
No,
Trudy, that
no.
this took a little longer than expected.
Yeah, well, I talk too much. So that's the other.
It's okay, no, it's good because I haven't been able to talk to you, so. it's good to
All right.
connect.
So yes, let's move on to the agenda. I've read everything for sure.
Yep, so the next is the introduction to the orientation session. And Trudy is now taking over.
Okay, so, all right, I'm just going to begin, and I don't think I'll do an icebreaker this time. It seems that there are at least as many people on the call who aren't here to prepare to be volunteer facilitators as there are people who are. So let me just make sure that I have it right. The people that are here to work with me in preparing to be volunteer facilitators are Steve, is that right?
That's correct.
Terry?
Yes,
Made an assumption about you. Nina, and am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, you are. It's Liga, right?
Okay, and Pamela. Right, and the rest of you are here for other reasons, right? So I'd like to suggest two things then, is that the rest of you mute yourselves for now. And
How
then,
do I do that?
at the bottom left-hand corner, it'll say mute, and there's a little microphone, and you just click on it.
And John, if I may, if you're there, if you want to turn your camera on, but not, if you don't know how to do it, not to worry, it's right on the side of the mute.
It's right beside the mute that you've just successfully done. So you can hear me, but I can't hear you, but that's fine.
And
Okay.
just while we're on this topic, when you guys are in your own sessions, I can start with everybody muted, except for the host, and then kind of unmute as you ask to. So I can manage that, of course.
So for now, I'm asking that the people who are here to prepare to be volunteer facilitators would unmute themselves, and that includes, I wrote your name down differently. It's Liga.
Yes, Liga, right.
Okay, got it now.
Perfect.
And the other thing is, could you please put me on speaker view, those 4 people at least? And you know how to do that? You go to the top right-hand corner. Oh, no, you don't. You go down to the bottom, it should be. I know okay, up to the top right-hand corner, you'll see it says view. Click on that and it'll give you a drop-down menu. And you're going to click on the first one that says speaker.
We can also pin you.
Can also which?
I pinned you, so you should come up on everybody's screen.
I want them to see a bigger, image of me, but now I'm seeing images of everyone.
Because when we have speaker, anybody who's speaking or making noise, so the rest of us should go on mute, if I may say.
Yeah, and I do know that, but for example, Terry isn't saying anything and yet he's on speaker view. Should we just go back to having the gallery view? Maybe that's easier. Any ideas? Ella, what do you think? So what are we doing? You've got me and Terry, a good couple. Shall we go back to gallery view? I can't get us back to that.
How's that?
Can you do that, Ella?
It's on gallery view. Are you seeing gallery view, or are you just seeing yourself and Terry right now?
Now I'm seeing gallery view. Why don't we just go with that?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I'm interacting now with Steve, Terry, Liga, and Pamela. Okay, so welcome and thank you again for agreeing to take part in this. And I'm here to help you get ready to facilitate the 3 sessions of the Intergenerational Story Project. I have experience leading research projects, some of which focus on intergenerational learning. They're usually within the context of academic work in education and gerontology. So I'm going to say much more than is on this worksheet that you probably each have. I hope you have. So you can just make notes on that, or I can also send you my notes. Or on the second page of the worksheet that I sent you, there's a section where you can record some questions while you're thinking of them, and then we'll get to them afterwards. So there are 2 parts of your session with me. First of all, we'll look at the process, and then we'll look at the content of the Intergenerational Story Project sessions. For the first part, I'll speak for about 20 minutes about the process, and then we'll engage with your questions. So make note of any questions that you have during that first 20 minutes or so, I'm guessing at the time. Are there any questions from the facilitators about what I've said so far? Okay, so let's begin. First of all, this isn't a solution-focused project. It's not about solving anything. It's about, as John said, opening up a conversation, the kinds of conversations that aren't often entered into between people of different generations. It's going to be an inclusive conversation, and I think this is really important, that's mindful of the needs of all participants, not only the older people, all participants, regardless of age, to see themselves as valued equals. This gives an opportunity for genuine intergenerational understanding to grow. The topics are weighty. Facilitating will be a challenge, I think, but also be rewarding. The project brings together 2 vulnerable populations over Zoom, which has its limitations, and addresses sensitive issues, aging, social isolation, and elder abuse, and I included bullying with that. These are weighty topics, but they need not lead to heavy conversations. Serious conversations, yes, but not necessarily heavy ones. That learning can often come when there's laughter and warmth and a shared positive emotional experience in which it's clear to all participants that they're being both supported and heard. So I'm going to work with this worksheet now. And at the top of the worksheet, you'll see it says, does everyone have this, by the way? It would be helpful. Could you just put your hand up? You don't, Terry.
No.
Do you have the sets of questions, Terry?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I think this will still work for you and we can send those to you, okay?
Okay, great.
Okay, so first of all, we're looking at the role of the facilitator. And you'll see that there's a little bit of white space there that you could write in. And if not, Terry, if you just have some blank paper, you can write in that. So think about and then answer in that white space, so you'll have it. Think about this question. What's the difference between a participant and a facilitator? Please take 2 minutes to think about it and write down some notes and then we'll discuss it. The question is, what's the difference between a participant and a facilitator? I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Okay, let's talk for a minute. So what for you is the difference between participant and the facilitator? Who'd like to start? Just put your hand up.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, Terry, what's the difference?
Well, I said the facilitator provides pathways for conversation, clarifies questions and answers, encourages others to participate, and ensures that no one is left out. The participants, on the other hand, are the people who are engaged in the conversation and the topic.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to build on that? Or tell you what you've written? How about Pamela?
One
Welcome,
of the, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think a facilitator needs to do is to hold space. That means psychically holding a safe space, an inclusive space for all of the participants so that they feel safe. And so that goes into the realm of the, you know, the not the physical, not the usual that we, but basically what we hold in our minds emanates out into the whole group.
Great, okay. So for that, I'm getting to that we're not engaged with business meetings, you know, it's not that kind of experience. Who else would like to comment? Yes, Steve.
I just like to highlight, I think Pamela mentioned it, safety. The facilitator has to create a space of safety. So in the first few minutes, Trudy, when you started speaking, you spoke with all the right words, we're all engaged. And right now is the first time in this project that I feel that we're getting somewhere. And how was that done? It was done by the aura, the professionalism, and all the years that you've worked with this project. So, or with this type of work. As far as the participants go, the more open they speak and from the heart, and John, you alluded to this previously, that's where I'm excited about this project. And I think we have to put aside that it has gone off to a rocky, started late, etc. That's all done. It is on Zoom, that is a reality, and I'm excited to hear the rest of this conversation.
Great. Nika?
I don't have much to add, but it's the facilitator's role to also keep the discussion flowing in a positive way, and the participants to make sure that they're engaged in these active discussions.
That's cool. Because many think that it's the facilitator's role to engage the participants, and that's partly true, but it's also the participant's role.
Exactly. And it's also, I think, the facilitator, how to get them excited about the questions that are coming and how to be excited about sharing and talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think there's a lot of agreement there, but I'm already seeing that you are 4 different people, which is great. And you bring yourself to this project, which is important. Okay, so I focused on 3 aspects of the role of the facilitator. I'm going to talk a little bit about each, and remember, certainly make notes. I left a bit of space, but I'll send my notes to you. So don't feel that you need to write down everything. So the first, I think, of the 3 key aspects of the role that I'm focusing on is to create and maintain a safe, secure environment for participants. It seems that you've already mentioned that. You're in many ways already there, but let me just review. So this is critical. And how do you do that? One way is by holding to a set of agreements or house rules discussed at the beginning of the session, the first session, and then returned to at the beginning of each of the remaining sessions. Another is by being sincere, straightforward, genuine, being yourself, being who you are, modeling inclusive behavior and modeling the agreements, which we'll get to in a minute. The second key aspect, I think, is to moderate the conversation by keeping it moving and focused, working to maintain an environment that's respectful and supportive. I got the feeling strongly that you're all on the same page with that. But just let me say that it's not totally about leading, but more about monitoring, advancing the conversation, shifting it when necessary, keeping the group on track, engaged and motivated. And the role is about listening more than it is about speaking. The interaction should model throughout effective strategies that are the opposite of ageist. The conversations must acknowledge and benefit teens and older adults. I feel that strongly. There isn't a focus on one age or the other. For this to work, it has to focus on both. All participants will have meaningful contributions to make, regardless of their age. I think that's really important. Okay. So, the issue of control. So naturally, the facilitators will initiate and guide the conversation. When might you as a facilitator need to exert more control during the session? What do you think? When would that be?
I think one of the issues that also needs to be acknowledged is there are times when the facilitator cannot create a safe environment because there's a participant that is not willing to go there. And so that needs to be acknowledged, and we need to learn how to manage that.
We're going to get to that. Sorry, just in a
Okay.
couple of minutes, because that is an important aspect.
Yeah, but yeah, not
It never happened, but it may, right? And you need to be prepared.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, not being in control is very important.
Right. So as a facilitator, you might need to exert more control during a session when there's an issue of safety, right? Personal safety, emotional safety, that sort of thing. It could also be an issue of fairness. If someone seems to be taking over the session or treating people unfairly. Any other reasons you think you might need to exert more control than you normally would? Yeah.
When somebody comes in with another agenda, it's a clear other agenda, and that will make the facilitator's job very challenging.
Yes, right. That's another aspect of managing the session effectively. Okay. So perhaps too, when the facilitator is needing to change direction, then they would temporarily take more control and give some thought. I'm not going to take time right now for us to talk about it, but how might you do that? And how might you do that on Zoom when the more subtle ways may not work quite as well? So let's go on, and this will probably come back again. The third aspect of the role that I wanted to highlight is the facilitator encourages participants to actively explore the topics within each session. So without taking over, without being the one who does all the talking like I'm doing now, you're encouraging the participants to explore the topics. So once again, this role is not to do a lot of talking. You're not a teacher, you're not a captain, you're not an expert. I don't think I am. But the role is to listen and keep on listening, and to coordinate and integrate and deepen and carry forward that conversation. And remember the value of humor and laughter within this. It's to give encouraging remarks, encouraging body language, to try not to listen with your answers running. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but it's certainly something that I do. Try not to. So listening with your answers running means that you're listening to someone speaking and you're already thinking of what you're going to say in response, right? Or you're already thinking, you know what that person's going to say. But that means you're not listening. So try really hard not to do that. Try not to be always a step ahead of your group, because that's really not, I don't think, the best way to do this. So natural, inclusive, flowing interaction is the key to enable a meaningful and focused conversation. Let's go on to the second part, and then there will be time to address any of your questions. The second one is the participant agreements or the house rules. So they're to be introduced at the beginning of session 1 and reinforced at the beginning of sessions 2 and 3. They guide the interaction of all participants. The agreements apply to everyone in the group through every session. But you really only need to give all the details during the first session, and then you can just remind people of what they are. So I've come up with 3. If you find with your group that you very much need a 4th agreement, then talk about it and add it. Throughout, you need to make this your own. So the first one is to listen without judgment, to respect the ideas of others, even when they're different from your own. Probably most of us are saying, well, I already do that. I listen without judgment. But remember to check your assumptions. We all have assumptions. I'm not asking you to get rid of them, but to be aware of them, and particularly check your assumptions about older people and about teens. You will probably have some. Just be aware of what they are. Ask yourself too, what are my personal boundaries in doing this work? And since you likely will have personal boundaries, your participants will also have personal boundaries. Think about what they might be and how you might ensure that they're not breached. The second agreement is to maintain confidentiality. And here's what I mean by this. It's not, I don't think it's possible to create a safe, secure environment without an agreement that there will be confidentiality. And what I mean is, if I were leading the group, what I say, you can take out anywhere. And what you say, fine, like take it outside of the room, that's fine. But what other people say stays here. That must be the way it works. I know that the sessions are being recorded and that then there's a podcast. And I have one suggestion, what you can do about that. You could maintain confidentiality during the sessions, and then at the end of the 3, ask all of the participants to say whether they agree to having their words used. And they will have the option, they must have the option of saying no, or saying, you know, I'm uncomfortable with some of the things that I said during the second session, so please don't include that. I think that's ethical. So when do you need to break the promise of confidentiality? Well, likely some of you in your work know all about this. It's when there's talk of harm to self or others. Talk of harm to self or others. To be sure of that, you need to know the policy of the agency that you're working with, likely the policy of NROC. So perhaps Madison or Ella would find that out for you. You need to have a route to take if that happens. The next one doesn't quite fit here, but I didn't really know where else to put it, so I'm going to put it here. And it's about resisting strongly the urge to solve someone's problem or to give advice. That's not part of your role, and that ultimately won't be helpful. So here's something that sometimes works. Well, no, it usually does work for me. Well, that's exactly what I said. So rather than trying to give advice, trying to take someone's lesson and do it for them, which is often a temptation, but we mustn't do that. You can do this, and I'll put my hand here. So rather than pointing, because it would be a pointing thing, even if you don't point, I think you should blah, blah, blah. Rather than do that, just take the idea and let it sit in the room, in the Zoom room. So you might say, here's what works for me. Or you might say, I wonder if this would help. And you put that idea into the middle of the room, and then it's up to the participants whether they want to pick it up or not. If you say, well, this is what I've done in that situation, people can think, well, too bad, I'm not doing that. Or, well, that's a good idea, I'll think about it. Okay, maybe particularly for the teens, but I'm not sure. But the advice is not going to work. If need be, you can make a suggestion and just leave it sitting there. The third agreement is to take responsibility for your own level of participation. And by that, I mean the importance of sharing the air, right? The facilitator must ensure that participants don't monopolize the conversation. So it might be, as Steve suggested, their own agenda, or it might simply be the fact that sometimes people speaking in a group actually don't know when to stop. And by that, I don't mean, oh, so-and-so, they never know when to stop. I mean, they genuinely don't know when to stop. So someone will start talking and they'll say what they intended to say in response to one of the questions. And then they'll come to the end of that, and then it'll lead to something else, and then it'll lead to something else. And then all of a sudden they're, way off topic. And for some people, there is the idea of silence can be unnerving, right? And so rather than be silent for a few seconds, they're on to something else and on to something else. And the facilitator must ensure that that doesn't happen. And sometimes do that repeatedly, reminding the group. If it's already an agreement, you simply have to remind the group of it, and that is usually what will work. But there is a need to interrupt that excessive talker in a way that's respectful. And I would at least give them a chance. Perhaps they do that once and they won't do it again. But if it's someone who's consistently taking up far too much of the space, then you need to do something. And the thing that often works for me is I wait till the person pauses for breath, and then I say, thank you, and then immediately go into something else. And I think the person will get the message. I mean, they usually do. So thank you. Or you can say, well, if there's time, we'll come back to that. And usually you don't, but that's okay. At least you're acknowledging that you've heard the person. Some people do their talking out loud, and some people think first and then speak. We all know that, and likely we all know which of those people we are. I'm one of the ones who thinks first and then speaks. And so often in a group of 10 people, it might mean that I wouldn't speak because I need to be invited in. So here's a strategy. Those people that need to be invited in. So when possible, you can create opportunities, as we did at the beginning of my part of this meeting. You can create opportunities for participants to think and write first, briefly and on their own. We just did that. And then have them share their thoughts with the others in the group. And that results in a more inclusive interaction. So then you've got the people who need to think about it, maybe jot something down. And you've got the other people who are just raring to go and do all their thinking out loud. And that way you can more effectively include both. So at the beginning of each session, remind participants of the agreements by reading them out loud, by bringing them into the room, so to speak. So one of the things you would say at the beginning, remember our agreements, to listen without judgment and respect the ideas of others, even when different from your own. If you were sitting at a table, then you could just look around the room and make sure through eye contact that people were with you. To maintain confidentiality and take responsibility for your own level of participation. So turn over the page and you'll see a mention of time management. The sessions, as I understand it, are 90 minutes, and there are 2 facilitators per group. So decide with your partner facilitator how you're going to keep track of the time. My thinking is you don't need to cover every question at every session, but most of them. You'll see how the questions are intended to build on each other, so they should be kept in the same order. If a conversation is, in your view, going in a direction that benefits the participants in the project, then stay with it for a while longer. That's entirely up to you. But I think for each session, if you had a brief conversation with your co-facilitator to talk about how you would manage that aspect. And also 90 minutes while we're on this topic, that's a long time for people to sit. So you might include a short stretch break partway through. So the fourth, is this really the fourth? Yes. Item is managing issues and concerns within the group. And that's been brought up. And here are some suggestions. Think about what's worked well for you in any previous similar roles. Ask yourself, is this a breach of our agreements? And if it is, then address it as such, as a reminder to the participants. Ask yourself, how can I bring the conversation back to where we'll feel comfortable to continue? And talk with your facilitator partner about how you'll do that. Your approaches may be quite different. And certainly speak with the designated support person from NROC about an issue that you don't think has been resolved, but that may be ongoing. There is support. If it's Madison or Ella Madison, then part of their role is to help you with that. I think we're almost. Okay, so next I'd like to talk about the content of the sessions, but first, give me any questions about what we've covered so far. Do you have any? All right, then I have, oh, yes.
I'm hopeful that we'll be able to access this recording again, because this is all very beneficial.
Thank you. Well, I think Madison's purpose is to send it to those facilitators who couldn't be here, right? And
Yes.
then I'm sure she could send it to you too, right?
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So if you have no questions, yes.
Oh, Trudy, I think you've answered this question, but engaging the participants and making sure that they actively participate. I know some are a lot quieter than others and may just want to sit back and take in the information and then mull it over in their own minds, which may be not a good thing to do because you want to be participatory. But I think that you answered it in setting the sessions at the beginning, telling them if they want to write things down and then speak, because we'd like, as facilitators, you'd want everyone to have the opportunity to participate. And if anybody's a little shy or quiet, I guess that would be the solution if they want to write their thoughts down and then speak.
Right,
So I
yes.
think that answers my question.
Okay. And another thing that I think I mentioned, but the idea of inviting people in. I know that the point is certainly not to center anyone out, but you might say, well, Steve, what do you think about that? You know,
Right,
when
right. Yeah.
they realize that the person is going to be okay with that.
Yeah. And then I guess you get a sense of being, if they kind of like that thing, if they're nudged gently, and if they're not, then perhaps, do the other route and let them be.
You might always,
Yeah.
you might also want to say that everyone has the opportunity to pass if there's something.
Exactly.
Either a
Okay.
trigger or something you're not that interested in, whatever, then you can just say pass and that will be
Yeah.
enough. And the other thing that I mentioned, Liga, if I'm ever in a group of 10 or more people or 8 or more, 6 or more, and you're leading it, I'd like you sometimes to invite me in because I'm likely to sit there. And
I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm of that same cloth. Yes.
I have 2 questions before we move on to, I'm going to tell you briefly about 2 other intergenerational learning projects that I've been involved in because they highlight something that I think might happen, something very good that might happen with your work. But first of all, what will make you feel like you've had a good session with your group? You can write it down or you can just put your hand up and I'll call on you. What would make you feel that you've had a good session with your group? Yes, yes, Liga.
I think a lot of it, you have to be attuned to people's body language on Zoom. You know, their expressions, are they, like Madison, you're nodding, that's a good thing. If somebody's speaking, acknowledge that you're, you know, we have to acknowledge that they're saying something of value, and they are. So I think that's one way. Probably you would get a personal feeling of, you know, everybody was participating and nobody was looking downcast, and it went well.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, I would consider it a good session if there was really open and honest dialogue discussion, where we spoke about things that often don't get spoken about in polite company. And for me, that would automatically lead to learning and that for me would be success.
Yeah, and you may have already answered this, but if not, overall, what will make this a good experience for you? Not just one session, but overall being part of this project, what would make it a good experience for you? Yeah, Steve.
If we expand the mutual respect and understanding of the generations, and we'll see that.
Right, okay. So having goals that are then, that you see that have been met by this, yeah, okay. All right, so I want to talk briefly about two other projects that I've been involved in, because I think the outcomes are relevant to the work that you're going to be doing here. So you may find, while you're doing this work, surprising similarities between older people and much younger ones. You may find insights far beyond what you can imagine now. And that's been my experience with more than one intergenerational project. So let me tell you about two of them, because I hope that this will increase your enthusiasm for the power and potential of this kind of work. So 15 years ago, I completed a research project about an intergenerational experience. I worked with 6 people in their 70s and 80s. 3 were in their 70s and 3 were in their 80s, and 6 people who were aged 18 to 23. All young women, all with a background in dance. The older people had no background in dance, although some of them remembered 50 years earlier, they'd enjoyed social dancing. So together with a choreographer, the 12 people created and performed before an audience in a public performance at Sheridan College in Oakville. They performed a 15-minute dance piece based on a poem written by one of the older participants. So I knew this was becoming more and more amazing every time I attended a rehearsal. So I hired a videographer to record the rehearsals, the performance, and then an interview session, because for me, this was a research project, an interview session with everyone held 2 weeks after the performance. And I asked them in their older and younger pairs, they were paired up in that way naturally. I asked them, tell me about the experience of the dance. And here's what I learned. I learned that when people are given an opportunity to move outside their comfort zone, as they do some focused work together, a collaborative project, then the impact on participants can be profound. And for me, that was key. People were moving outside their comfort zone. Now, in this case, they were moving way outside their comfort zone, and we're not necessarily doing that with our participants, but we're still shifting them a little outside the comfort zone and being all in the same boat, so to speak. They're working collaboratively on this project. That fact is relevant for the work that you will be engaged in during this project. No one's being asked to dance, but participants and facilitators are being asked to shift even a little outside their comfort zone to engage in that meaningful work together. So give that some thought. And if one day you have absolutely nothing else to do with your time, my film is on YouTube. It's an hour long. It's called Moving Together, but if you search that, you'll get dozens of moving in, moving out, moving up, moving around, moving, it's hard to find. So if you search on YouTube under Trudy Metcalf full movie. So if you get the spelling of my name right, but if you choose to do this, I will never ask you, I promise. Trudy Metcalf full movie, and then just click on the first entry that comes up at the top. And you'll see immediately that I'm no filmmaker, but I'm a pretty good researcher, and it's a good research piece. So another intergenerational experience that had a similar effect for me and was much shorter. In fact, it was shorter than the project you're beginning. It was 2 hours. And so I guess 2 summers before the pandemic, I was teaching a summer course in gerontology at Laurentian University in Sudbury, where I'd worked on and off for many years. And it was a 3rd year undergraduate course that I called literary gerontology. And so there were 35 traditional age students in my class, and I engaged 20 older adults in their 60s and 70s and a few in their 80s. And to everyone, I gave a package of readings. So there were 2 chapters, 1 chapter from each of 2 novels, 2 poems, and then 2 excerpts from memoirs. And all of them were written by older people, and in all of them, the theme was about growing old. So everyone had the same package. They had it for 2 weeks, and then everyone came together to the campus and sitting around tables with 6 people at a table, usually 2 or 3 older adults and 3 or 4 students. Together, they talked about the ideas that came out of those readings. And so I remember there was one participant, a man who had had a stroke and was in a wheelchair and lived in a retirement, in a long-term care facility near the campus. And he heard about our event, and the people at the long-term care facility got the materials for him. They got him to the session that morning, and he happened to be sitting at a table with one of my students who was a nursing student, 3rd year nursing student. And they found, to their amazement, that among all those readings, they had highlighted the same passage from the same memoir. It was one of the last books written by Oliver Sacks. And they had highlighted the same passage, and they talked to each other about what that meant to them. And when the session was over, and I also asked them each, the old people, the young people, to write a journal entry and submit it. So I had a lot of data on what the experience had been for them. And this nursing student said to me, she said, you know, since in my nursing program, I've been able to specialize, I've been in geriatric nursing training. And my family and my friends say, why do you want to do that? You know, in the Moving Together film, someone says exactly the same thing. My friends say, why? Why would you want to do that? And she said to me with this kind of very light look in her eyes, she said, so I always used to say to them, I love old people. I just love listening to their stories. And then her face became very serious and she said, I will never do that again. I will never in any way dismiss the worth of an older person simply because of their age. And I thought, oh my God, it was 2 hours. And here's a woman who's about to start a career in geriatric nursing, and she gets it. And so again, I'll say that when people are asked to move even a little bit outside their comfort zone, and in this project, they certainly did. The younger people said to me afterwards, I didn't know how I was going to have a conversation with a much older person who knows all this stuff anyway, right? And the older people said, I didn't know how I was going to have a conversation with people who are university students and they're experts in gerontology. And so for each of them, they were moved outside their comfort zone to engage in focused, meaningful work together, and the impact on the participants was profound. So before we move on to the next part, the content of the sessions, Do you have any questions related to what I've just told you? Okay. Now I'm going to set myself up for part 2. And for the content section, if you have the 3 sets of questions to ask at your 3 sessions, if you could get that out now, that would be helpful for you. Okay. Ready? You have them? I have mine on colored paper so I can tell them apart. All right, so there are then 3 sets of questions, and the questions are highlighted, at least on your computer, they were highlighted. They don't come out so clearly. But anyway, so you can tell the difference. My suggestion is, if you struggle with a particular question, the way it's written, then rewrite it. You know, my own experience, about 6 months ago, I was asked to record 2 2-hour sessions for something called the Smart Aging series of sessions. So they were 2 hours long each, and I was set to record them, and I had written them. So I was very familiar, but over the previous couple of years, other people had worked with this material and they had changed it a little. They hadn't changed the content or the intent significantly at all, but they changed it enough so that when I started reading this, I thought, that doesn't sound like me. You know, I would never say it that way. And some people could be fine with that, but that was difficult. And so I say to you, when we go through this, if you find that I've written some things in a way that you wouldn't normally say, then for heaven's sake, change it. Try not to change the questions too much, because if they're going to be used in the podcast, there needs to be consistency among the different groups. But certainly, make this your own. Make it something that you enjoy doing and that you feel comfortable with. I think I mentioned before, decide with your partner how you're going to use the time within each session, and you'll be better able to do that when you've had a look at the questions. Some of them, I think, are ones that could be answered quite quickly. And then there are other ones that have much more depth to them. So familiarize yourself with the questions and the key ideas. You may notice that in every session, the questions start out being framed more generally, and then they become more personal. So participants, I think, must always have the option of responding in a general way. It's up to them whether to go high risk or low risk. That's a choice that they must have. And you can bet if someone chooses to stay with a general way of answering the question, then inside they're feeling it in a personal way. They just might not feel comfortable saying it that way. Okay, so let's look at the first session, which is about ageism. And I have some possible introductory questions, and I'm really hoping that you'll use them because we come back to them at the end of the 3rd session. So if you change these at the beginning, make sure you change them at the end. Okay, you might want to change the wording, that's fine, but change it back at the end so that it's consistent. So things like, what do you hope to learn from our time together? What do you hope to teach someone else? People might not, the younger people particularly, I'm making an assumption, might come thinking, I'm not going to teach anybody older anything. And yet they need to know that there's definitely that possibility, and maybe even that expectation. What do you want your contribution to be? How might your participation change you? So then in each case, I've given a bit of a script at the beginning, and I'd like you to stay generally with what that is, but as I say, change it so that it sounds like you. So I'm just going to read it. This first session is about ageism and its impact on those affected by it. It's also about what we think and feel about ageism based on where I am, our own experiences and understanding, and about what we could do to combat it. Ageism isn't about being old or being young. It's about being treated unfairly, feeling left out, sometimes even hurt, because of our age. So then I've used this in a course on older adults and social isolation, this drawing activity, and it seemed to be very effective. So I thought we might try it here. So let me just read. This would be the oral instruction that you would give. Take a piece of paper. I'm assuming that people, who knows where they're going to be during this Zoom call, but they'll have a piece of paper nearby. And even if not, I think I found a way around that. So take a piece of paper about the size of a page of computer paper, fold it in half, then open it out. On one half of your page, draw a picture of a teenager, and on the other half, draw a picture of an old person. And stick figures are fine. There are no prizes for artistic merit. You won't be asked to show anyone what you've drawn. That's really important that people know that in the beginning. While drawing your two people, one of a teen and one of an old person, think about what a typical teen and a typical old person would look like, what they would have with them, what they'd be wearing, where they might be, what they'd be doing. All of those kinds of things will make it easier for them to create their picture. Or they could just choose a list of words to describe what each one looks like, what they're wearing, what they're doing, and so on. And then I say, any questions about what I'm asking you to do? It's important that you do that before sending people off to an activity, but it's also, I think, not as helpful to say any questions, because that's too broad. You want to keep the activity focused. So you say, any questions about what I'm asking you to do? Or you might even say, any questions about what I'm asking you to do right now? Decide which of the questions are more significant, because I think some of them are, and so will you. So I'm looking on the second page now of that first section about ageism. Okay, so one of the questions is, tell about a time when you treated someone badly because of age, even if it was only in the way you thought about that person. So if people choose to answer that, then they're simply retelling the story of something that happened. However, and so I think that wouldn't take a lot of time, but it could. But if you look at one further down, what do you think is the value of a teenage person and what is the value of an old person? To me, those two have a lot more depth to them. And so you might decide to allow more time. So I guess my point is just here, when you look at these questions, make them work for you. Think about what is going to be more helpful to the group and build that into the way you conduct the session. So in each of these 3 sessions, I invite people in with a brief introduction. So this one was, I think, a very brief introduction to what ageism is. And then you prepare them to leave by asking key questions at the end. You invite them in and you prepare them to leave. Be sure that you leave room at the end for those closing questions. I think that's really important. So the closing questions here from the first session are, what for you is one of the key ideas that you'll take away from our first session? And what was your most important contribution to the discussion? So those are the kinds of questions that kind of package it for them before they leave. Okay, second one, let's see. The second one is about social isolation. And I always like to put social inclusion with social isolation because you're moving from one toward the other. So what I've said as an intro there is feeling socially isolated when you don't want to be often leads to feelings of loneliness. Loneliness can have significant negative impact on your health and well-being. So I'm trying to make the point at the beginning there that being alone is not necessarily bad, right? Being alone when you don't want to be is. So the difference between alone and lonely, and then I have a list of words, and my suggestion is you simply read them out slowly, instructing the people in the group to listen to them and just sense what their reaction to those words is. So you're going to say alone, on my own, solitary, in solitude, private, and so on. And notice that some of those words describe ways that most of us wouldn't want to feel, but other ones might not be a problem. So they can just start out by sorting out themselves what's really meant by social isolation. So the first set of questions then is all about teens, but it's not only for teens. It's about the experience of being a teen. And even though some of us had it a long time ago, we've all had it. And then in a sense, we've all had it with children, if we had children, grandchildren as well. So the first set of questions, even though it's all about teens' experience, it's presented as an experience that everyone in the group can relate to. And it includes, but it's not exclusive to, the teens who are present. The second set of questions, I think that starts at the end of that page, maybe it goes on to the next one. So the second set of questions is about the experience of older people. And I wanted to lead from that into the idea of belonging, although that wasn't given to me as one of the topics, but I think it fits in well. That the idea of social isolation, the goal is perhaps to turn it into a situation where one has a feeling of belonging. So I've said belonging is a basic human need to feel accepted and included and to identify positively as part of a group. That's huge for teenagers. We all know that. You can belong to a family, a group of friends, a team, even a place. A yearning to belong is innate, instinctive in all humans. So that takes you into a discussion of belonging. And although I have never led a session with any of these questions, I think I would like to be sure that I had time to spend on the notion of belonging. For some of us, we've done social isolation to death pretty well. And certainly it's an important point and it needs to be addressed again, but to take that into the whole idea of belonging, I think is helpful. And once again, you want to be absolutely sure that you leave enough time to include those closing questions and let people package the experience. Okay. My goodness, I'm almost done. I said I'd take an hour, and Madison, I'm afraid it's been almost that much. Okay. So I've got here, and I'd stress this again, there's absolutely no need to be rigid with anything that I've given you. Any questions about the second session? Okay, then let's quickly look at the third. And that was more problematic for me, elder abuse and bullying. Elder abuse is such an extensive topic on its own. And I just didn't know how loaded it would be, and also how to be sure to include teens in a discussion of elder abuse. And certainly that's where this project is going. But it might be more helpful to look at the notion of bullying. Elder bullying is, I mean, there's a lot in the academic literature now about elder bullying. Projects are being done or have been done in Ottawa on elder bullying. So it's not something new, and certainly it's not new for teens. If not for the teens in your group themselves, almost certainly for people that they know. So I'll just say what I've written here as the intro. This time we're starting with the topic of elder abuse. It can take many forms, for example, physical abuse, sexual, emotional, financial, the violation of an older adult's right to make choices, as well as neglect to provide the necessities of life, food, clothing, safe shelter, medical care, and so on. Abuse is never the fault of the person being abused. I don't think that people in the group wouldn't know this, but it's important to remind them. If someone tells you they're being abused, believe them. Both the people who are being abused and the people who are being abusive need help. As bystanders, we need to know what we can do to make a positive difference safely. And I didn't think that the purpose of this session was to work out what participants as bystanders need to know to make a positive difference. But I wanted to say that that's an important concern. So in our first session, we talked about the value of old people. Ageism, you remember, is about attitudes and beliefs that cause people to treat certain other people as if they were less important and had less value because of their age. So now, to get a little bit into elder abuse, I asked people, without telling us the details, to share something that you already know. So what they might say in order to answer the question, what do you already know, might be one sentence or one phrase, but it brings each of them into the discussion. One aspect of elder abuse that's getting more attention is called elder bullying. And that's right, a person may bully another person regardless of their age. I think that might surprise some of the teens. But sometimes it's an older person who bullies another older person. So let's think about the act of bullying. It's not only older people who are at risk of being bullied, is it? Teens may be bullied too. We talk about how attitudes of ageism can apply to teens as well as to older people. So then there are some questions, and I think that sets up the potential for a really interesting conversation and a way of connecting across the generations, people who actually do share something. I talked about the Moving Together film, and one of the things that one of the dancers said about that, after the performance, there was a Q&A session, and she said, you know, I realized that the older people, many of whom are 60 years older than we are, and us, we are in many ways going through exactly the same transition stage in our lives. She figured out that she and her friends, who were people who had just finished university in her case, and they were thinking, okay, so what's my life now? I don't know what my path is. And she said, and I realized the much older people are at the same point, right? They've left what we would generally think of as adulthood, and they're moving into something else, and they're really not quite sure where that transition will take them. I thought, wow, that's just such a wonderful point for people to connect on. Okay, what else? So yes, right. In the third session, you need to leave even more time to do those closing questions, more time than in sessions 1 or 2. People need an opportunity to reflect on the experience of taking part in the project overall. So I would say at least 25, 30 minutes for those closing questions. And this is how I suggested that you would do it. Toward the end of the set of questions for the third session, I've said, I'll give you 3 minutes to think about each of these questions, and then you can take a turn to tell us your response to the question. So first of all, you'd read the whole set, and they relate directly to those ones that I mentioned at the very beginning of the first session. So these are those ones returned at the end of the experience. So I would say, question 1, what did you hope to learn, but what did you learn? Second one is, what did you hope to teach someone? What did you teach someone? Third one is, what did you want your contribution to be? That's what they were asked right in the beginning. And what was your contribution? And fourth, how has your participation in the Intergenerational Story Project changed you? So what I would do is read them all so they get a sense of what's happening, that they're thinking about what their hopes were at the beginning, and now they're coming back to what they are now. And then you're going to look at each question at a time. So you're going to say, what did you hope to learn, and what did you learn? And give people time to think about it. And then encourage everyone in the group. If they choose not to, that's still okay, but encourage everyone in the group to respond to that, because I think it's important for all of them. And then there's a final question. As we end this part of our project, what would you like to say to the others in our group? And that's important too. And usually people will say thank you, or, I've enjoyed the experience, whatever. But it's important that they get an opportunity to close off like that. Any questions about the third session? I know I've given you a huge amount, but as Steve suggested, people can listen to it again, and I will send you all of the notes that I read from. So as follow-up, I'll send my notes to Madison for her to forward to you. Madison will advise you about policy around reporting harm to self and others. Okay, and Madison or another staffer, I don't know, will be your contact around unresolved issues or concerns. So you know who that person is and you know how to contact them. And I'm sure for the good of the project and the people in it, it will be important for you to do that if it's needed. So my hope for you is that you find this project to be a meaningful and rewarding experience. And please know once again that your time and talents are appreciated. That's the end of my part.
Thank you so much, Trudy.
Okay.
Any questions about the content or how the session will run?
Can I ask a question? Does that
Yeah.
seem enough to get you started at least?
Yes.
Yeah, a better sense of, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so next I wanted to discuss some potential start dates. So the date I'm looking at right now is next Monday. We have to, these sessions have to happen in the evenings because we do have youth participating and they go to school during the day. So I was looking at the time of 5 o'clock, which would be 5 to 6:30 for a 90-minute session. Would that work for anybody to start facilitating next Monday?
I would prefer a later date to start facilitating because I'm away from home and I might be driving home on Monday.
Right, you're watching your grandchildren right now, right, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Is anybody available to start next week? Because really the sooner the better for this to start. Because if not, then because I can still set the next date for the second group would be the 5th. I'm looking at Mondays, as it seems everybody hopefully is available on Mondays.
I think
So-
Madison, I think I could start next Monday if there could be, all the sessions don't have to start at the same time then. I am available on a Monday.
Because having this set time and date would really help everything move forward, especially when looking for the rest of my participants. So we'll do Monday. The 14th.
So what kind of timing were you looking at between the 3 sessions?
So I can do them weekly at this point. But once we get to the second and third group, I might have to do 2 sessions a week. I have to get the recordings done by at least mid January. So, and the way the holidays fall too this year are on the Mondays, of course. So I was looking at the 14th of November, the 21st of November, and the 28th of November for the first group.
What does that mean, first group?
So the first set of 5 seniors and 5 youth participants that will be participating in 3 sessions. There will be 3 different groups. And then the next group to start, next sessions to start would be on the 5th of December.
On the what?
5th of December.
And so you want them all to always be on a Monday?
Preferably just so it can continue, so it's on a routine more than anything. But if Monday doesn't work for everybody, we can certainly move it around. But my timeline right now is to start the first session on the 14th and then the second group at least by the 5th of December. So if you are Terry, are you available to start on the 14th?
No, in fact, all that week I'm out of town. I can do
Okay.
the 21st probably. Madison?
Yeah, I'm just looking at my calendar while I do this,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I wasn't sure whether it was coming through.
So did you and Pamela then want to start on the 5th of December for the second group, Terry?
Um,
I mean,
I'm good for the 5th of December.
Does that mean the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th?
the 5th, 12th, and 19th, yeah.
Yeah.
And then once I have to find at least 2 more facilitators for the last 3 sessions. Last 3 sessions, the last group. So that gives me enough time to then find the other 2 just in case.
What do you mean by last 3 sessions?
I only have enough facilitators right now for the first 2 or the first 2 groups. So like the last group, I don't have a set of facilitators yet for. I don't have enough. So
That's for
unless
the January sessions.
yeah. But are we okay with the 5 o'clock time? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know Ella, you said that you were away on the 21st, which I will end up probably doing the Zoom then.
Okay, if I'm home from Winnipeg, if it all goes according to plan, I could.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
I'm definitely able to.
We'll see.
Okay, so November 14th, first session date. Do you think Steve is available on that day?
I could ask him. He's just upstairs from me.
Okay, I know he just said he was sleeping on another call, right?
Yeah,
So,
he's on a call now, but I can ask him later.
yeah, if you could ask him if he could do it with
Sure.
you, I would appreciate
Is that okay? I mean, we kind of know each other.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. I could take a few liberties with him being the other facilitator.
Sounds like a nice dynamic.
All in a good way, right? Now, Madison, one question, you will provide everyone with the Zoom link?
Yeah,
for
well,
those 3 sessions, or Ella, you will? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
yeah, I think we'll probably just get them all set up at once if that's the
Yeah,
case.
yeah. Okay, great, thanks.
And how many people do you imagine will be in each session?
So we have 5 youth participants and 5 senior participants.
In
So
each,
yeah,
each, so we'll be facilitating 10 people for each of the sessions?
yeah. 10 people, and they'll be all the same people for the 3 sessions.
Okay.
So you can kind of build that relationship with them as well, going with the project, because it will definitely be a part of it.
Definitely be a what?
Be a part of that, building the relationship with the participants and with you guys.
Okay.
I think, yeah, so I will then start giving out we have waivers to be given to the participants. They are getting media waivers, so just gonna find the email so I can show you what it looks like for you all aware.
Okay, I have to go grab my kid from school, folks, so I'm gonna
Yes, okay.
stop the recording and make sure it's circulated tomorrow.
Thank you, Ella.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Great content. Thank you so much.